Brian says he's trying to log in. If you want to give him just a minute.
He's not going to. He don't ever give me.
Oh, yes, he does. Got me, Ron.
Yeah. I know he does.
We've got some witnesses here.
Okay, he's in.
Let's bring this meeting to order. This is October 6th meeting of the County Commissioners of Jackson County. And the first order of business that we're going to take up is a public hearing about the proposed schedule of values to 2021. This was presented to the Board of Commissioners and will be voted on Tuesday. Is that correct?
Next Tuesday, October 13th.
Okay. And the purpose of this meeting, for any person who would like to speak about this at this hearing, we will hear you now.
And we did not have anyone sign up for public comment. But Ms. Ash is here if anybody, later on the agenda, if anybody has any
Okay.
questions.
So hearing no one, we will adjourn this public hearing, and in 3 minutes, we will have a second public hearing, correct? Now, if I'm not done this correctly, between the two of y'all, the rest of you, correct me out. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Glad you be with us. We'd rather you been on a little more on time.
Oh, dear.
Thank you,
He is, yes.
Yes, right.
Yeah. I mean, it might fall under that,
Wrong. You should have read this fire prevention.
bottom one there, the criminal misconduct, but I think it's easier just to.
He's good.
Yeah.
So I know I have it in here somewhere.
Right after the agenda.
So, okay.
What time?
All right, our second order of business tonight is another hearing about the Unified Development Ordinance. Anyone present that would like, do we have anyone who wanted to speak tonight as to that?
We did not have anyone sign up on this public hearing.
All right. So like, not hearing anyone and no request to do so, we will start our regular meeting at 6 o'clock.
You do. No? I'm full, I'm gonna go get some coffee.
Bring us meeting back to order of the Jackson County Board of Commissioners, being September the 6th. This is a regular scheduled meeting. This time, I'd like to ask Commissioner Ron Mao if he would read a proclamation we have concerning fire prevention week. Please, Matt.
Yes, sir. Fire Prevention Week, October 4th through the 10th. whereas Jackson County is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting the county, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire, and whereas home fires killed 2,630 people in the United States in 2017, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to 357,000 home fires, and whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 173,200 annually between 2013 and 2017, and whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking, and whereas more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves, and whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire, whereas Jackson County residents should stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from stovetops, and whereas residents who have planned to practice a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire, and whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half, and whereas Jackson County first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education, and whereas Jackson County residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes, and whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Therefore, the Jackson County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim October 4th through the 10th, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week throughout this county, and urges all the people to check their kitchens for fire hazards and use safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week 2020, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of Jackson County's fire and emergency services. Adopted the 6th day of October 2020, attested by Ms. Angela Ann Winchester, clerk of the board, signed by Brian Thomas McMahon, chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're very fortunate here in the county to have the fire prevention that we have with the fire departments and all the people that work within the fire departments, and to have the folks in the North Carolina Forest Service, and all they do, and the U.S. Forest Service. And they do a lot of, not only do they do a great job when they're called on, they do a great job educating, especially our kids, and all about the hazards of fire and fire prevention and so forth. And having heard this proclamation, I propose that we make this October the 6th through the what, 10th? Fire Prevention Week in Jackson County.
Second.
Yes.
Okay. Do we need to vote on this as so, or all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's fun. All right, next is approval of the agenda. If you've read, I hope you have read the agenda, if you see anything that we need to add to the agenda, if not, we need to approve that. Do I, all in favor, say yes?
You'll need a motion to approve and a
Need a
second.
motion?
Yes.
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
All right, and second. All right, we've got a motion and a second. Are there any discussion?
Commissioner Deeds?
Yes.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Luker?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Mao?
Yes.
Chairman McNamee?
Yes.
And also the approval of the minutes that you have, not only from our regular meeting, but the work session also. Do we have any corrections or anything to that?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Commissioner Mao?
Yes.
Commissioner Luker?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Commissioner Deeds.
Yes.
Chairman McMahon.
Yes.
All right, for administrative reports, I have none. Mr. Matt?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. First, Mr. Breedlove was here, gave us an update on TDA and how everything's been going well. Have new data from, I can't remember which week now, the most recent week we've got data and still running ahead of last year. So lots of tourism going in the county. And then the other thing I just want to mention is I wasn't here at the last meeting because I was on vacation, and I was on vacation at the beach using we had won at a silent auction for Full Spectrum Farms several years ago, and I just want to call out Full Spectrum Farms for all the good work they do, working with the autistic folks in the community and things, and also appreciate their willingness to work with us with scheduling that, because a couple hurricanes had extended our opportunity to use that. But the main thing I wanted to say is Full Spectrum Farms does a lot of good work, and if you have the opportunity to support them, please do so, and many other nonprofits in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Luke?
No report, sir. Thank you.
Sir. Mr. Woody?
I would like to echo what Commissioner Mouse said, that we do have so many wonderful nonprofits in Jackson County, and I know several of them have not been able to have their fundraisers that they normally have, especially in the fall. And so I would encourage all of us to think about giving donations if we're able, and the community to support these groups. And in light of that, I would like to especially commend Marcy Jones, who is serving as the interim director at United Christian Ministries. She is doing an amazing job, and they are in the search right now for a director. So if you know someone that has a heart for serving our community in that way, please point them toward United Christian Ministries. But I do, Mrs. Jones is just doing an amazing job, and we appreciate her so much.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I am happy to report that we delivered 20 puppies yesterday to the Humane Society in Pinellas County, Florida, and so they're being adopted out to a forever home. So on our way back home today, that's all I have to report.
Thank you, and thank you for what you're doing. Mr. Mack?
No report today, sir.
This time, we'll start a new business and talk about scheduled values.
We've got
Is that what we're doing?
we've got the informal comments by the public, and we do have someone signed up for informal comments.
Okay. I'm sorry.
And that is Mary Ellis, and I believe she was on there.
Huh. She doesn't even listen.
If you want to go on, I will try and reach
On
out.
that second one?
She's the only one that signed up. I can try and reach out to her, and we can come back to that if
Okay,
I,
that's
if
fine.
I get her.
Be fine. Keep it straight.
Okay.
Look. Ms. Ash?
Proposed schedule rise for the 2021 reappraisal. I'm going to see if anyone had any additional questions they'd like to ask. For the information pack that I presented September 1st and September 8th.
I just had one question, actually, and I read this in the paper, Ms. Ash, and you mentioned that we were going through this process and that it would mean different things for different people. Some people's taxes might go up, some might go down, and some might virtually stay the same. And that was dependent on the area in which they live. So I think that's real important, because a lot of people automatically assume when there's an appraisal, their taxes are gonna go up.
Right.
So, when people ask the question, what's that based on? Is it just the location of where their property is, or?
It's a lot of different factors. Obviously, the first thing that we're looking at is everybody's in a taxing neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're gonna review the sales of that particular taxing neighborhood and try to determine what the base rate is for that particular neighborhood. And then let's say there's lakefront properties in those particular neighborhoods. Those values wouldn't necessarily be reflective of the base rate. They may be more than what a general home would sell in them. So it all just, there's a ton of different variables. So it would be location and view and a wide variety of different things. So we just take those base rates and adjust it up and down. But what we're looking for is what the sales are in the particular taxing neighborhood. And hopefully we've got sales from all those different variables that we can become values from.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, anyone else? Clifford?
No comments or questions.
Okay, I do.
Okay.
I read a couple of reports pretty extensive about this. And you have been real transparent about all this, which is very good. And it's, sometimes being transparent gets you in trouble. The more transparent you are, the more somebody reads into something they didn't. Am I incorrect at some point you said that the value of the property in this county would go up 36%?
Colway Township.
Just a couple of,
That's a projection right now for Colby Township, and that's Colby Township as a whole.
how about Tobe County?
Will County, I believe, is 12%.
But,
Yeah.
to go back to what I first said about being transparent,
Mhm.
there's two different people come to me about us going up on our taxes, 36%. You know, quick as they see that, if they think our property, our value, next year, our property tax is going up 36%. And I was able to explain to them, no, that's not the case. As a matter of fact, we don't want that, what the property tax is. But it's, some people, I guess, and a lot of us, we hear what we want to hear there. When we get, first thing we read, get right. And I don't know. I guess anything we put out, we need to be, see if we can make it as crystal clear to everybody, not that you're not. But that, I just want to make that point.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because I got one of those questions as well. As soon as, probably within 45 minutes of the spoken out news article went out. And probably should have been more clear, but, yeah, when we're talking about this percentage increase, we're talking about the township as a whole. There's thousands of parcels in that township, and each one's gonna go up. One might go up 200%, one might go down 5%. There's a ton of different variables in there. So overall, that township, which is thousands of parcels, may be going up 30%. But that doesn't mean each parcel is gonna go up 30%, and we don't know what the tax bill will be at this point. And the Silver Herald mentioned that. So millage rate's adopted, we don't know what the tax rate will be. So right now, we're just talking about assessed value. We're not talking about what their tax bill will go up by too.
That's good. And we all need to try to, make sure people understand that best. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Anything else?
I'm sure we don't have any, criticism after this.
Okay, I hope not. That was said to tell that it's 24 hours open for public comment, correct?
Yes, yes, Mr. Vice Chairman, this is one of the first two items that we're going to ask that you hold open, since there needs to be public comment allowed for 24 hours, and have that be held open until the recessed meeting next week.
And we shall do that.
We will recess this time and not adjourn.
No need to be a recess.
And I'll be back next week, so hopefully get this adopted.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Is there any other questions?
I just wanted to make sure that people understand that, and just trying to address what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The tax rate hasn't been set, so until that gets set, you don't know what your taxes are gonna be. You can use your numbers so far and get an idea, If that percentage applies to the township you're from, what's your property value might go up. But when the tax rate gets set, that's when you'll know what happens to your tax bill.
And we don't have a single property value set right now. Everything's changing. We have 400 and something sales just happened, just our deeds process last month. So we're, and the sales are fluctuating all over the place. So we've still got a long way to go. We thought we were closer, but we still got a lot of sales to review to make sure our values are accurate. So the market is doing well, very well right now. So, yeah.
So, and if I may, Mr. Vice Chair, just one more add to that conversation. State law requires that we will publish what's called the revenue neutral tax rate to the public well before the board takes action on the tax rate. So under the auspice of transparency, not only is it dictated by the rate set, the public will also know what the revenue rate is. So when the board makes a decision, the public should know their value, should know what's a revenue neutral tax rate, and then eventually know what the tax rate is set at. And between all of those numbers, you should be able to figure out what your actual tax bill will be.
Well, to those listening that maybe doesn't understand what revenue neutral is, explain that.
Yes, sir.
I
So,
may need you to.
so basically all that's doing is running a formula, a calculation of what would the tax rate be. So let's just use the example that our tax administrator has given us, that if the values do go up 12%, in its basic form, you may reduce the tax rate approximately by 12% to be revenue neutral. It's basically setting the tax rate to pull in the same amount of money. Now, the only thing is I would caution people of using that simplistic version of what I just explained, because state law allows us to take into consideration growth into this conversation. But just in simplistic terms, it's basically producing a tax rate that shows us what the rate would be to give us the same amount of property. It's the same amount of
Ms. Ash, how many sales did you say we had last month?
425 deeds, I believe, something like that were recorded, and that's just property ownership changing deeds. I don't know how many registered deeds got, but that's,
Okay.
and that wouldn't necessarily all be property sales. That could be,
It could be a
family,
lot.
family exchanges or something like that too.
Okay.
So where there was no sale.
There's
price.
398 in August.
Yeah,
So
390 in August.
we're pushing
I
400 a
think
month.
425. It was
398.
the second most we've had since 2006.
Isn't that something? And is this since 2006? You said?
Yeah, 2006, I think there was 1 month we had 450 deeds recorded.
Now, would this would be existing homes? Or is this wouldn't be building?
It could be a variety. It could be combining properties, it could be dividing properties, it could be complete transfers. It's a wide variety. It could be
Some
anything,
deed was registered.
right, anything that could change ownership or change the property in any way. We got around 425 of those last year.
Well, just because in thinking about the people coming in and purchasing in Jackson County, and what that might do to our future infrastructure needs, it's something to keep in mind
Definitely, yeah.
when we're thinking about.
We have a lot of things going up right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've got a lot of building permits coming in, so
Exactly.
that, we were just talking about that
Right.
downstairs, all the houses that are going up right now, Pine Hampton and some of those other areas. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, what about it? So we have completely participated property account. It's not.
No, that's just projections right now. Yeah, we're still in the process of going through and reviewing each individual neighborhood. So we'll have to do that, and then we'll have to go back to the ones we've already reviewed and make sure that the sales that have come in
So
did
that's
change
what I was
that.
gonna ask you. So all these sales can.
Absolutely, you could have bought something at the beginning of the year, and current sales at the end show that your value should be more now. So there's very good likelihood that you bought it for a certain amount in January or February of this year, and you're gonna get a higher assessment than you paid for it if there's more sales that show what the current value is. Because what we're looking for is the market value as of January 1. So if there's other sales that show that you're valued more, it could be more than you paid for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Baker.
The next item is an offer to purchase. This is an offer to purchase from Heights. Marcus Metcalf, I think you're all familiar with Marcus. There he is, he's on here, he's able to unmute himself. There are 3 tracts in the town of Silva that the county owns by tax foreclosure. Try to show you from different perspectives. One's here and then these 2. They're small. They're very small tracts. I also gave you the tax cards are on here to show you how small those parcels are, and what the tax value is on there. We own all 3 of these by tax foreclosure. Had some people interested in them previously, but nobody's come forward with an offer because of the size of the tracts and what you can do on them within the town. Heights is interested in them related to their business, which Marcus will tell you about in just a minute. He did a lot of work on this, trying to figure out the best way to come forward with an offer. He wanted to purchase these and go through the upset bid process so that there are no restrictions left on the property, so that they can do what they need, and any of the other options that might have been available would have had some restrictions. So ultimately decided this was the best way to go. He did spend some time balancing what to offer, because it needs to offer enough to survive the upset bid process. So it was a balancing act that I think he did a good job on that. So again, I've got these parcels. If you probably know where this is, if you drive by Allen Street, you'll see them. There's an overgrown trailer and a small house that's kind of falling apart. We did find someone living in that at one point. There was some confusion after the foreclosure. The person was not here during the foreclosure. This was many years ago. Marcus is aware of that situation and understands that if he was successful in purchase, he would be taking that on, but has checked it, and I think that person is no longer there. He's have to watch on that to make sure. Marcus, do you want to now talk about what your plans are with the property?
Sure. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you for allowing me to talk to you tonight. I appreciate the hard work that everybody's doing. I fully appreciate how hard it is to be a community leader right now, and I'm grateful for all y'all's service here to Jackson County. Heights has this opportunity to do some good work. We partner with public schools. We've got an office at Jackson Community School and the high school, and juvenile justice to serve the most vulnerable and at-risk children and families here in the community. We do mental health services, free after school and summer programs, and job skill training programs. We started down this rabbit hole a couple years ago when Jackson County started looking at using the Green Energy Park as a placement for their animal shelter, for our animal shelter, and we're a big fan of that proposal, and we appreciate it. The rub is that Heights has been housed and using space at the Green Energy Park for about 6 years. We use the greenhouse space there with the county, and we've got a sawmill, and we keep some bee equipment, and just used it for general purposes through the years. And we've been working with Mr. Adams here, and we're grateful for all the assistance we've had from Heather Baker and Rich Price and all of y'all. And we got sent a list of 4. So we're looking for a new home. So as the animal shelter relocates to the Green Energy Park, Heights needs to relocate to a new location. So a given year, we run several hundred students through that Green Energy Park area for education and all the programs we do. And so we're looking for a new home. We got this list of foreclosed properties as we were looking into that, and found this particular piece of property, and we were interested in it mainly because of the location, the central location to downtown. It will unfortunately not suit our needs for several of the things that we need that we have located at the Green Energy Park. for the greenhouse and whatnot, but it will work really well for some of our workforce development programs. And so that's what we started to lean into. Heights partners with Southwestern Commission, and we are the WIOA provider here in Jackson County. And so if a student drops out, we will pay for their GED or high school diploma, pay for a technical degree from SEC, and 16 weeks of what we call an apprenticeship program that's paid on the job training with many of our local employers. And we would probably use this as an opportunity to teach job skills and job skill training. It's hard to say exactly what we would do with it. Anybody familiar with construction understands that there's just a million variables that go into something like this. And a lot of it depends on what you find when you hit the ground. As you start digging into walls and seeing what's there. We are under the clear assumption that those houses will probably be needed removed. They are in a pretty significant state of disrepair. Again, I would encourage any of y'all to go by there and see what's there. We would probably consider it dangerous at some point, and it's in pretty poor shape. To just the clear understanding is that we would clear the property, clean it up as a benefit to the community. And what we do next is hard to say. We would probably clear it and build some sort of low-income housing or emergency housing, as those are just two big needs here in Jackson County. What we do know is our partnerships are strong. We would partner with Jackson County Schools with their career technology, their shop classes at the high school and the Jackson Community School, and do whatever building projects we would do with the schools. And Heights is also the restitution community service provider here in Jackson County. And so if a juvenile gets charged in the juvenile court system and has to do some sort of restorative justice programming, some sort of community service, then we would be the provider that they do it with. And we have chosen to not do traditional community service of some of the things that, are meaningful, but not all that exciting. And we would use this opportunity for a student to be able to work with us to not only restore their relationship with the community, but hopefully learn some important job skills. So that's more or less what we're doing.
Yeah, I know Commissioner Deeds asked which tract had the house. That is the one that shows as 830 Allen Street. I'm trying to get some of these pictures to show you the stuff. Is this one here? Yeah. Go back.
One of them's a house trailer, isn't it, correct?
Yes, and then the other
That's
one
the
that shows,
Norman,
yes,
Norman was.
yeah,
That's the house.
That's right.
that's a trailer. It's hard to tell.
Is there water and sewer available there, Mr. Metcalf?
It's a good question. We assume there is. We assume that the TWASA lines run through there, but again, until we have actually taken ownership of the property, I've been hesitant to dig around there too deep. But we assume that.
Mr. Vice Chair. Vice Chair. Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah. Mr. Lucas.
Hey, yes, sir. Thank you. So to open it up for discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we accept the offer that Mr. Metcalf has presented in reference for these 3 parcels of property.
Second. All right, we've had a motion and we've got a second. Mr. Mount, any more discussion?
Yeah, the motion would be to approve this resolution, adopt this resolution.
Yes. And I'll just say, Mr. Metcalf, as a commissioner and as a resident of Jackson County, you said many thanks to us, but many thanks to you for what you do in our county and with our youth. And you've made a difference in so many lives that's just amazing. And just know that I personally appreciate the job that you do and the service that you bring to our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luca.
Any more discussion? We're gonna vote on the resolution. Let me ask you one more question, Marcus, please.
Yes, sir.
You say it could build if you get this property. There could be a while before you do any building there, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it could be a year or 2. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Probably so.
Do you have plans Do you have plans to go in there and upgrade the property itself as far as maybe clearing it off and get rid of some of the things that needs to be got rid of, to make that more pleasing there? Even before maybe you do anything else.
Yes, sir. That'll be the first step to clear the property.
And would you plan on doing that quite early in the process?
Yes, sir. As soon as we would take ownership, it would be a matter of weeks before we'd start cleaning out at least the vegetation and seeing what's there. And then we would decide what to do with those buildings, and then we'd start the process from there. But the first step would be clean up, and it would happen in a matter of weeks.
That'd be great. That'd be great. Okay, we've had a motion and we've had a second, and Ms. Winchell.
Commissioner Dees?
Yes.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Luker?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Mouse?
Yes.
Chairman McMahon?
Yes.
Okay, pass. All right, second, the next.
All right, the next item.
Thank you all.
Hard it is to see the screen from there. Is
It is, isn't it? It's hard to see it from there.
Yeah, is a request. I'm really here from Norma Taylor today from Transit. I did this for in past years, so she asked me to do it again. But every year, Transit comes to you and asks you to hold a public hearing on 2 grants. And the reason you hold a public hearing is because there is a local match on this, and she shows you that amount here on her memo. And so she's asking to hold a public hearing, a combined public hearing on both of these for November 3rd at 5:55. I think it's on here, 5:55 for these 2 grants. So she can then, if she gets your approval to do that, she'll apply for these 2 grants again this year, which do pay for a lot of things, including salaries at Transit.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I move that we accept this proposal
For the public hearing.
for the public
on
hearing.
November
November
3rd.
3rd.
Second.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Any more discussion? And this again is gonna be on November 3rd.
At 5:55.
5:55. Okay, Ms.
Commissioner Mouse?
Yes.
Commissioner Luker?
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Woody?
Yes.
Commissioner Dees?
Yes.
Chairman McMahon?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Adams,
Yes, sir.
please.
Yes, sir. The first item of discussion you see is the Appalachian Women's Museum request. As everybody recalls, Commissioner Woody had brought this issue up at a previous meeting, and there's going to be follow-up discussions regarding this. We went ahead and decided to put this on the agenda in hopes that we may be prepared for the board to take action tonight, but there are still some steps that need to take place. I did work directly with the museum folks this week, and I do think we've got a good plan of action in place. So what's going to occur is they have now acquired the services of an engineer, free services of an engineer, that's going to put together a proposal that's going to, it's to be an engineer proposal that'll give estimates for design costs. And just a reminder for the board and for the public, what we're talking about is a pump station for the Women's Museum for a bathroom, so that they can install a bathroom in the museum. And so what the engineer will put together is a proposal that'll list out the design costs, bidding and implementation assistance costs. Just because I feel like the folks at the museum would need this type of assistance to help them just get the project implemented. Equipment cost estimates, installation of that equipment estimates, and then any other things that the engineer may identify, whether it be permitting costs, things of that nature. I do believe that proposal is to be submitted to the museum by the end of this week. If not the end of this week, it'll be at the beginning of next week. That's why when you see your work session agenda come out, you may or may not have this proposal in the agenda. But I will bring this back minimum by next Tuesday at the work session. And so at the work session, you'll have a cover letter from the museum along with this detailed proposal from the engineer, so that the board would know exactly what's being requested. And hopefully, it'll put you in a position to make a decision and move forward with this project. One thing that was discovered, as you all are aware, the town of Dillsboro is also looking to put a bathroom down in that area. But as engineers started looking at it, it's been concluded that it may be better to split the systems. Meaning, at first they were looking at combining the pump station and combining it with the museum bathroom with the public bathroom. But apparently this brings in additional regulations and will require things such as like a backup generator and things that would just add additional costs to the system. And so what I'm being informed is that, and this is with the understanding from an engineer from Schwassa and from town of Dillsboro, is that it would be cheaper to just split the systems and put a smaller system for the museum. And then also, the second part of that is I believe the town of Dillsboro is just on a different timeline than what the museum is trying to push forward. So hopefully I'll have the detailed information to you next work session.
Question?
Well, I just want to make one comment. I appreciate Mr. Adams following through on this. And just so everyone knows, we did reach out to the town of Dillsboro and they're in agreement with us moving forward this way. We didn't want to leave them behind or not be sensitive to their concerns and needs as well, but they have a different timeline.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Do you want to go on the ACC Go, buddy?
Yes, sir. Board's information, the Association of County Commissioners did extend their deadline for goal submission until October 15th. And in the interim, Chairman McMahon has been approached by a retiree, some retirees, in regards to asking him to bring to this board an additional goal to be submitted to the Association of County Commissioners. That's something that I passed out to board members, and it's also on the screen here. And in essence, the request is in regards to the association getting involved with the North Carolina Local Government Employees Retirement System. And I'll just go ahead and read the verbiage that's on the screen there. You can see it's requesting that Jackson County Board of Commissioners requests the NCACC to engage in a discussion of reasonable pension reforms focused on maintaining retiree pension value. As a part of this review, she confirmed the methodology for calculating and awarding cost of living increases is that make sure it's appropriate and reasonable. Basically, what is occurring through many years now, retirees have not seen a cost of living increase. And I believe that is the reason why we're being approached to ask the association to get involved in that. I can tell you, I added this next paragraph, which I would highly recommend to include in this if the board wishes to proceed forward. Just to give a little background to the board. Of course, we participate in the local government retirement system with the state of North Carolina, all other local governments. Currently, the system is managed by a 9-member board who is appointed by the governor and the state legislature, and then it's really overseen by the state treasurer himself, Falwell. And so ultimately, the 9-member board and the state treasurer is the one that makes the ultimate decisions in regards to trying to maintain the fiscal viability of this. So I also recommend that the board wishes to proceed forward with this goal is that all reforms should protect the fiscal integrity of the local government retirement system and its defined benefit structure. I specifically put that language in there because currently, all local government retirees and current employees, and which will be future retirees, we benefit from this defined benefit structure. And what that basically means is that our benefits are set out. It's not dependent upon the market. And ultimately, there are pros and cons to a defined benefit structure in the sense that it guarantees certain returns for the retirees, But generally speaking, you don't see the great returns when the market does well. It's defined benefit structure. And so personally, I'm guaranteed a defined benefit structure, and I believe I'll benefit with that when I retire. Also, I believe the regional pension reform should attempt to meet the needs of local employees, employers, and retirees if the association is going to engage in this conversation. And the reason I say that is, again, being an employee myself and being part of the employer and then being a future retiree, we all have something at stake when these discussions are taking place. And so whenever we try to get association or other entities involved with this, we should always try to make sure that they keep in mind, we want to keep the structure to basically be viable, and also make sure we understand that current employees and employers must be involved in the conversation. So for example, current employees pay 6% to their retirement, and currently right now, local governments match that by 10.23%. And so when you start making decisions about benefit structures or making decisions about cost of living raises, making decisions about really anything related to this retirement system, at the end of the day, if the returns on the investments can't pay for the increased costs, ultimately the cost will be put back onto the employer and current employees. And so the current employees have benefited for decades now about maintaining our match at 6%. And so I guess my point is where I'm at on this and making a recommendation. If the association wishes to participate, then I'm just recommending that they make sure they take into consideration all aspects. And the understanding that we're also trying to help the retirees in the discussion. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it over to you. I know you were approached by this to see if you have anything to add.
Yeah, thank you, Don. I'll just mention that I think your wording is very pertinent and important for us to take into consideration. And I do think as a county, it's important for us to be at the table through our association, to be a part of this discussion to make sure that this system is viable. It gives our retirees a cost of living adjustment, but it also protects the system and the current employees and county budgets across the state. I was asked to present this goal by Chuck Wooten, our former manager. Mr. Wooten has been appointed to that board that Don referenced that works with the state treasurer's office to administer and oversee retirees' pensions. So I feel good about having Chuck Wooten on that board. He's been appointed, and he's the one that made the request to me.
At our last statewide conference for the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, the treasurer, Mr. Farwell, thank you. He gave us an update, and North Carolina is #1 in the whole country in ability to continue funding our retirement system moving forward. And I wrote that down because I thought that was pretty impressive. And it has the second most efficient pension fund, he said, in the universe. And they did this, study, I guess, worldwide on pension funds. And we're very fortunate that they have been so careful and conscientious with that. But he did mention this concern, and this is worldwide as well. There are less people paying into retirement now than there are people getting retirement. And that's partly because of baby boomers, of which I'm one. That was a huge population increase during that time, and there's less people now paying into it. So it is a concern as we go forward, and I think that just validates the importance of your comment about the fiscal integrity.
So when this goal was written, does the retiree pension value statement, does that get linked to the return assumptions? I mean, you said this doesn't depend on the market. It does, because the assets, it's invested in market. Underfunded pension funds are a huge liability across the country, and I know North Carolina is the best, but North Carolina is still
What I said
underfunded.
was the
It
benefits
is,
given
that's the thing.
Yeah.
are not dependent
Just-
upon the market. So
Right, but if the money's not there, potentially,
within the regs
they could always change it.
Sure.
But I just want to make sure to clarify what I was saying, the benefits given are not.
And I know Mr. Falwell, he's, I believe the return assumptions have been brought down in North Carolina in the last few years. I'd have to go back and verify that, but it seems like North Carolina is one of the states that have done that. But I know that's where a lot of states are getting in trouble, because these pension funds get said you can put this much in equities, this much in
Yeah.
bonds, and then you look at the return assumption they're making, it's like, that's not ever gonna happen. So I don't know if
That's
that's-
what's happened in North Carolina. And so North Carolina, they've been doing, it's been used at 7%. They've had to have over 7% in order to take a look at things like retiree, cost of living raises. And they haven't actually seen the 7%, so they're not even achieving that.
Right.
And so my understanding is this month sometime, they're gonna do a 5-year look back, and they're going to start potentially making a more realistic assumption of what the return's gonna be about the 5-year look back. And so they are gonna start addressing that. And all of these things that we're talking about eventually evolves back around to our percentage of the match. If the returns are not paying for the additional cost, it does
Right.
eventually evolve back to our return, to our percentage match. And then also the current employees who are paying 6%. But they are gonna be taking a look back on that.
So is that, I guess I'm just, like, the question is that clearly, is anything about returns written, just clearly written in the goal, and I don't see it? That, as far as it's gonna be, it talks about evaluating the methodology for calculating awarding cost of living increases. Heck, the bigger issue is taking a look at the returns that they're doing, but I don't see that in the goal. What are the assumptions of the returns? Because 7%, you look at the limitations of what they can invest in, I look at that and I'm like, not gonna happen.
So,
Well, one thing I wrote down here is that after 9/11, he said that counties chose to fund 10% of the payroll, but that he believes it needs to be moved to 15% up
yeah.
to sustain, just to be able to sustain.
So our current
I hope I'm
lookout for
right.
employers right now is it's 10.23 this year, 11.35 next year, and 12.45 the year after. And so, and I've heard that 15%.
That's what he put
And
out.
so so it's not mentioned in the statement. That could be something that could be considered if that's what you're recommending in the statement. This doesn't have to be voted on today because it's the 15th and you're going to recess this meeting.
Right.
Then the language can be rewritten or changed if you
Just
like
revised.
for next week, the 13th.
And we can have further discussion on it at the work session as well.
So,
That's a good.
but that's, Ron, the 10th on that second paragraph as far as the fiscal integrity, and then trying to make sure we bring in employees, employers, and retirees on these conversations. The idea being is that all of these things, again, if the returns don't pay for what we're discussing, then it eventually turns around to the rates to the employers and the employees. So for example, if we raise an employee contribution from 6% to 7%, well, I know that sounds just like a percent, but that is a percent pay decrease to our current staff. And so I just think all of that has to be taken into consideration when you're trying to develop, if you're trying to develop, say, a defined structure on how to give cost of living raises. Okay, and that's ultimately what the goal, if you really get into the detail of the lobbying coming from the retiree association, they haven't seen a cost of living raise in a very long time, and they haven't seen it because of the 7% return. They have to be at 7% or higher. And so, of course, the lobbying is to try to get that reduced and or trying to come up with different mechanisms to allow for a cost of living raise. And the reason my attempt at that other paragraph is to basically say, okay, that's fine, but you got to take into consideration the whole system and not just the cost of living side.
Right, no, your paragraph, I'm looking more at the first paragraph.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything about looking at the return assumptions specifically in this goal, even though you mentioned they're doing that work and stuff, but that's the issue in all the states that are having this problem, is there are some return assumptions they've made for decades.
And to me, I've actually had a conversation with Kevin Leonard about this too, association. The 9-member board, we're pleased that we've had, we'll find my notes. I know we now have, out of the 9-member, there's gonna be 3 managers and 1 retiree. There's professionals that are on that board that hopefully will continue evaluating this system, as it's been done in the past. I'm aware of what you were stating about how well our system is doing. We're doing better than the state. We're doing better than a lot of other systems because we have the governing body and because of the treasurers that have been in charge of it have made this sound fiscal decisions. And so when I talked to Kevin Leonard about this, I think that should be in the goal. And I'm always hesitant to politicize any of this. Okay, because what we really want to have is people who are running this, that are making fiscally sound decisions.
Yes, that's.
But you can't completely pull politics out of it because at the end of the day, it's elected officials who are funding the system. And so that's the sort of the balance that we gotta have in these conversations.
All right, just something we can discuss, 2 more meetings, correct?
One more, next
Well,
meeting.
one other work session, then we meet.
Yeah, we
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If there's any proposed language,
Yeah.
please send it to me.
Okay.
Mr. Bowles. Thank you for being patient.
Good evening.
Yes, sir.
Tonight I come before you to ask you to consider the amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance regarding erosion control process, really. It's section 5.3.5H of the Unified Development Ordinance. It's the general requirements of the erosion control ordinance or standards. And what we'd like to add is really what I liken to the order of operations standard, which basically says for multifamily developments that the building pads must be established, roadways entering and throughout development should have their initial layer of compact stone in place. All slopes must be seeded and ground cover established, and all sediment basins and erosion control devices shown on the approved erosion control plan must be in place. This is the language we'd like to add to the ordinance. As I shared with you when we were calling for public hearing, we see this happening in multifamily development projects where they like to start the grading and the vertical construction at the same time. And what you run into is a muddy mess. And Steve Beasley's here with me, and if you need a recap of all that, he's glad to give that to you. But it's been a 2-3 year struggle, especially in some of our areas, working with developers that want to try to do both things at one time. What this set of amendments, what these set of regulations will help us do is hold building permits on those types of developments. And we mainly see this type of activity, vertical construction and grading work going on in multifamily housing. We don't see that with commercial development. We don't see that so much with single family home development, but we see it with this type. This gives us a chance to have our inspectors get the site stabilized and erosion control measures in place before we start bringing other big equipment in and trying to do a dance between all these different construction contractors doing different parts of the job. I request that you make this consideration at your recessed meeting on October 13th. The planning board has held a public hearing on September 10th. They unanimously recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that you consider adoption of this amendment. And they've also approved a consistency statement that these regulations are consistent with our comprehensive land use plan and reasonable conditions. Like I said, I have Steve Beasley with me here today. If there are any questions, we'll be happy to try to answer those before.
I have a question. How did you speak to this too, Steve?
I think this is probably the best thing that's happened in this county, probably since the slope ordinance. It should have happened a long time ago. I thank y'all for, putting your attention to this, plan board, and Mike for coming together with this. It seems kind of simple what you did. This is a giant first step, but still a lot of work to go into it. But I appreciate you guys doing that, because what I've ended up with is people trying to move dirt, people trying to build a building at the same time, and they're at each other's throat. I'm in the middle of it, and this is gonna put some structure. The thing, it was almost uncontrollable before. I mean, we had, I hate to say you have to have favors before you get something changed like this. But, the feedback from the state I've had is real good. Civil and a leader, Jackson County being a leader, they would like to see some more counties pick up and go forward with some more rules like this. That's feedback I had last week. I had Carlson dinner, and that's the first thing we said. We wish everybody would do this. So you're on the right track. Thank you.
Probably anything that could be added to it. Better? Got y'all discussed or anything like that?
I think we have a lot of pieces that we're putting together. We talked with Steve, we talked with Tony. We've got some other concepts that we think that we can bring into back to the board to help address more comprehensively, not just erosion. Erosion is one part of it. That happens when you're grading. When you talk about water quality, it's also stormwater. And so there's a lot of different things that we've discussed, ways to improve our ordinance structure to help address some of the concerns that we've seen over the past couple of years. This is a good first step. This talks about the construction end of it, which is, so we're going to be bringing some other items back to the board that Steve and Tony and John and myself can talk about would be beneficial, we believe, for commissioners to consider adopting.
Yeah, I've got there's a lot of ideas you can go. This is the first step you have to do. So you can get this on the plan. When you talk to the engineer and you approve those plans, this is giving you something. I've got to have this, put this in your sequence. This is what's got to happen, and that's going to help a great deal, getting it on the plan. Gives us room to do that, and we can keep a building permit from having to get that. Now, we need that authority. Erosion needs that authority. Point blank,
Now, the mass problem we had initially, go with this would have taken care of a lot of that.
it would have taken care of a lot of it. Like I say, it would make them get that done. What happens is they ask for revisions, they'll get started, then they get revisions and it stops the earth movement. This will make the engineers get this in sequence, that this has got to happen, A's got to happen before the B can happen. And that wasn't that clear before. We got to run against each other.
I think it's also worth noting that this won't vary. This process won't vary based on who is monitoring or issuing the permit. This isn't saying, hey, it's a state issued permit that the county won't apply this standard. We're just saying that whoever is issuing the permit, whatever the plans are that are approved, those plans have to be met and stabilized and to our satisfaction that they're following the plan that their engineer created before we'll issue it. So that would apply to state projects, that would apply to county led projects across the board.
That's correct.
Well, and just so that you know, Mr. Beasley, we appreciate so much your diligence in trying to address these issues when we have that. And we have submitted a proposal to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners to allow counties that want to, that have the staff, to be able to monitor even state projects. Because we know that the fact that they're in Asheville and couldn't get here was a huge issue as far as violations being ignored and those kinds of things.
You need to be on the side. You
Exactly.
need to be on the side.
And you are, but unfortunately, we didn't have authority. So we're hoping that that can be addressed. We're moving toward that. We'll see what happens.
this would absolutely have solved some of the problems, I won't say all of them, but it would really give you some teeth to stop this thing.
Yes.
You're not ready to go to B, you've got to get A. And that's simple as that.
You said state projects.
Yeah.
Does that include DOT?
Well, if I think if DOT I don't know that it would apply to road projects. I think it would have to be, for us, it's a multifamily, unless DOT is gonna build a multifamily structure,
Okay.
then.
That's
then it
that's where I was thinking of some
Yeah.
of the processes, some road projects where they could be working here.
Yeah,
It wouldn't apply very well, I don't think,
Right.
depending on the
well,
size of the
it'd be
project.
tough because we don't issue building permits
Yeah.
for the roads.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be a trigger for us
Right.
to get in
Right.
there.
Gotcha. Okay.
I appreciate y'all's work on this. It's really needed. As y'all know, you've had complaints about it.
Yes.
One other thing, you cannot really appreciate this unless you've seen progress. And you may have, all of us may have, but if you were up there when this first started, and it was pouring rain, and that rain, they were up there graded, and there's nothing covered, the water's coming in every direction, and your concrete trucks backing through it, and they're trying to put up wooden structures, it really seemed like, it didn't even make sense.
It's uncontrollable.
But it was terrible. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you so much.
Where are we at? Appointments? Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm there.
Well, I'm reading what you're reading about Eddie Wells, Director of Department of Agents, has requested reappointment of Christina Ash, Roy Burnett, Sue Nation, and Charlene Ward to the Council on Aging. That's 4 people he needed to. We need, and he's asked if we do so, and do I hear a motion that we,
So moved.
to Mr. Wells asked.
So moved.
Second.
Your, motion and a second, any discussion? Ma'am?
Commissioner Deeds,
Yes?
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Commissioner Luker,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Mao,
Yes.
Chairman McNamee.
Yes.
All right, next on the, Cullowhee Planning Board. Mr. Luker, Ms. Woody, and Chairman. And the person to, appoint. Is any of the 3 of you outside?
The person that I, am requesting to be appointed is, waiting a background check. Everything else has come through, but they changed that process a bit, I believe, so I'm waiting for that.
Right.
I do not have a name yet either, Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Luker,
Mr. Vice Chair, carry mine over as well, please.
do so with all 3 of them until later. Planning Board. Mr. Deeds. Carry mine over.
Yeah,
If I may, Mr. Vice Chair, I think we have, I believe that, talked, Angie and I have been, conversing, we think we have, and Commissioner Luker, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have a way to fill Commissioner Luker's vacancy with board member, and that would leave us vacancy in that large position that can be filled, and we do have, I believe we do have some interested parties that we could consider. What that would entail would be if Commissioner Luker is willing to make a motion to appoint Mark Letson, who is the chair right now. He is in an at-large position, but he is eligible for the District 4 seat as he lives in District 4, and he can fill that seat. If that appointment were to be made, that would allow the board to fill an at-large vacancy that would create, and then that would help us fill up that board. It would fill up the board. Last month we were informed in Commissioner Deeks, your appointee, had moved out of the county, so you know, going to be glad to pick. So I'll leave that to the board. And Mr. Luker, Commissioner Luker, if you'd like to make that motion, that's certainly a way that we can proceed.
Yes, sir, Ms. Folsom, thank you. We do have a great individual that's interested in that, being on that planning board. So I do think it's in the best interest, and I will make that motion that we move Mr. Letson over to the district board position.
Second.
All right, we've heard a motion and a second. It's Mark Litz, correct?
Mark Letson, yes, sir.
And any discussion about?
I do have some, because I actually had somebody contact me about maybe being interested in filling the spot, and I have not had the chance to speak to Mr. Luker about that. So I don't know if we want to maybe include this on our recess, since we're going to recess, and if things don't get worked out. Next week?
No.
Well,
I mean, it's just been the last couple of days that somebody's.
do we do these one at a time? Or do we do them in a group? Because I do want to make a motion for the at-large position. And ask that, do we wait for that, or?
Well, you've got a motion and a second now, so something's gonna have to be done
I see.
with that motion. And then it just depends what happens with that
Okay.
motion, if the seat is.
Then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, we'd ask Mr. Luker to withdraw that motion until he has an opportunity to speak to Mr. Mount.
He can do that, yes, if he chooses that, that is one way to move forward.
Could you do that, Mr. Luker?
Yes, sir, Mr. Vice Chair, I can. I'll make a motion then to withdraw.
If you and Mr. Mount can talk about this other individual.
Yes, sir.
Now what?
Well, yeah, that does not leave an at-large seat vacant.
So at that point, we would just, if you, or we can carry that over. Yeah, you either way, you would still need to find someone to fill that vacancy. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that worth waiting on? Sorry. All right, well, yeah. And I think either two has been nominated, is that correct? For, Southwest County.
Yes, there are two here on this letter.
Not ready.
It's Dr. Elliott and
Jennifer Abshire.
and Jennifer Abshire.
So there's three, and we still want vacancies.
No, just two.
Three or two vacancies.
They're requesting two. I think the bylaws allow up to three, but some
Oh.
counties just have two, but they're requesting these to be filled, I believe, at this time. And then I think she suggests a path forward for a third in the future.
Okay, as to Sheila Boyle's recommendation, I hear a motion.
I move that we accept Dr. Elliott and Jennifer Abshire to serve on the Southwestern Child Development Commission area board of directors.
Second.
All right, we've had a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Commissioner Mount,
Yes.
Commissioner Luker,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Commissioner Deeks,
Yes.
Chairman McNamee.
Yes.
All right, as I understand that, that's actually our business session. I need to go for the questions from the press.
You have Beth Lawrence on here from the press.
Beth, can you hear me?
Yes, I don't have any questions tonight.
Okay. Mount Vineyard. No one else?
No.
Are we going into closed session? We're gonna recess first.
Go into closed session first, and then recess after closed session.
So motion to go to closed session.
Second.
Oh, but we have to state which reason, don't we?
Oh,
Legal.
legal.
So a motion to go into closed section for legal action per North Carolina statute GS 143-318.11A3.
Second,
Yes, I did.
we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair, do we want to take a break while we're trying to get everything set up?
Okay.
Maybe 2 3 minutes.
Please.
John,
Yes.
your name's on here. This is not on here that other day.